decide but don't inspect. This is an important distinction to make when you're making content decisions at scale. So when you're, let's say, redesigning a site or a suite of sites or a global presence, there's a lot of content to make decisions on. And a really common way to do this is that you look at every piece of content item by item. So maybe this is in a spreadsheet that you pass around to lots of team members, et cetera. And you could just look at each piece of content and decide what to do with it. So you might say, this is a product page, and therefore, and this one needs to be rewritten. So we're going to rewrite that. And maybe this is a press release. And so we need to move that as is, right? There are a lot of problems with making these decisions on a item by item basis. Different people might do different evaluations. You're kind of mixing up the order of things where really you want to make decisions about content before you're actually executing on it. And one of the reasons for that is that you really want to get a feel for what your effort's going to be way before you do it, so that you can make appropriate content decisions and kind of scale up and down quality for different sections of content. So a better way to do it is that you filter out what you're going to do with the content based on rules. And my little jerry-rigged filter sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. It's easier to do this with your computer, et cetera. But let's say that we are going to make a decision separately about the products, and we're going to separate out the products and the press releases. So let's try this. Kind of have to hope it along a little bit here. And so now we've filtered out the product pages from the press releases. And now notice that all of the content has been accounted for here. So we have made a decision about every piece of content, but we haven't looked at it yet. So we might decide to randomly sample these and look and say, did we really get the rules right? Is this really a product page, et cetera? We still might decide to do that. Another thing that might happen is, let's say that we look at the press releases and we say, whoa, this is way more than we want to move manually. We thought we were going to be doing this manually because of a variety of reasons, let's say, and it's going to take too much effort. Well, then you might filter it out more, and you might say, well, what if we had a filter for press releases that were older than 1 year? Well, then you could use rules for that too, right? And you could say, all right, here, these are the kind of slicker pieces of content that press releases that we've worked on recently. We know they're better. We're going to use them. And then you could say, well, the older press releases, we are just going to toss. So we're going to throw in the trash. Now, one advantage of doing this is that we, at this point, have made a decision about this content. We didn't have to look at it. We can move on. We're throwing away these old press releases. Now, of course, you might also look at what can we do automatically, et cetera. Do we need press releases at all? There's a variety of questions there. But the point is that we're making these content decisions with rules. And at that point, too, we now have these different swaths of content, these different buckets of content that we can hand off to different teams. So, for example, the rewriting the products, maybe that is done by the product owner teams. And so you can hand that off. Also, with the the press releases, let's say you're going to hand this to interns, you can hand that to them. You might decide to do this automatically, at which point the migration of the press releases maybe don't have to be individually inspected at all, except perhaps for some QA. So the big picture is, to make a decision, you don't necessarily need to inspect the content. And by doing things more rules-based, you're able to get a better picture for what you're trying to accomplish early in the project. And then you've bucketed it out so you can hand off the work to the various teams later.